Hello, I'm Ellen Feldman, and I'd like to tell you a little about my new novel, Paris Never Leaves You. Set in Paris under the German occupation when the City of Light went dark, and 10 years later in Manhattan, in the giddy optimism of the aftermath of the war. It's the story of Charlotte Poiret, a young widow struggling to survive and to raise her infant daughter on her own. The inspiration for Charlotte came from women who were nothing like her. In my reading about World War II, I came across many women who had spied for the Allies, or fought for the resistance, or risked their lives in a variety of ways for the Allied cause. And I began to think about what it would be like for women who were not blessed or cursed with such courage. Women, in other words, like me. Novelists are always personalize the matter. And that's what made me think about Charlotte and her child. What would she do to survive? What would she do to save her child? How far would she go? And that raised other questions. When does compromise become complicity or collaboration? Is the enemy still the enemy if he provides aid? And is silence merely a failure to speak up or another kind of collaboration? Another difference between Charlotte and other women, these very brave women who lived through the war, and I'm not suggesting that the women who were more ordinary and did not spy or fight or anything like that were not brave. But another problem for Charlotte was her feeling after the war. She was faced with another challenge, and it was more psychological than it was physical. She's left with survivor guilt. Charlotte didn't survive by luck or by accident. She made choices during the war. We all make choices in our lives. Few of the choices are as crucial as the ones people had to make during the occupation of the war. And yet they are sometimes difficult for us. And the issue is, how do we learn to live with these choices after the war? How do we learn to live with our pasts? Do we deny them? Do we flaunt them? Do we become guilty about them? We all have to learn to live with our pasts, and that's one of the issues that really interested me in writing this book. This book is not a moral treatise by any means. I want the reader to have a good time. I want the reader to become lost in this world that I've tried to recreate. But I also want the reader to think about these choices. What would I do in the situation? What have I done in my life? Now that's the moral issue. Those are the moral issues of the book. There are also the two settings. There's, as I said, Paris, when the City of Light went dark. And then there's the publishing world. I think those of us who love to read, and like me are very unhappy if they're not writing, are fascinated by the world of books. How do publishers choose what to publish? How do they choose how to promote them? And how do booksellers deal with running a bookstore under the occupation, but also after the war? So it became logical for me to put Charlotte in this world. During the occupation, she works in a bookshop. When she comes to New York, she works for a publishing house. There's another reason I chose this setting, and that's when in my youth in New York, I worked in the publishing world. And while the industry had changed a great deal since the fictional Charlotte worked in it, it hadn't changed that much, and human nature never changes. So many of the events that Charlotte has to deal with, or incidents, are things that happened while I worked in publishing. And certainly many of the minor characters in the book were inspired by people I worked with at that time. I had a wonderful time writing Paris Never Leaves You. I hope you'll have as much fun reading it. Thank you. Over.